Paper towel?
No, I think I've got it. We were going through Matthew 24 and 25 and looking at how in Matthew 24 and 25, Jesus jumps around an awful lot on the time frames of those end times things. And if we want to go back through that, we can, but that wasn't my point. My point was somebody raised the question. They said, well, why didn't he just go through it step by step by step? Why does he have to jump all around like that? It's very confusing. And the bottom line is that God sometimes deliberately does that. And I wanted to share just some verses about that. We talked a little bit in Sunday school about it, but we didn't really go in very deep. And I want us to look at some scriptures about that. And if you look at Matthew chapter 13, Matthew 13, 13, start at 11.
Matthew 13:11.
Yep. And of course, how is Matthew constructed as a gospel? What is the principle that describes how Matthew's gospel is structured?
Gospel for Jewish.
That may be true, but what is the actual structure of it?
You mean like how one of them was very detailed? Like, I don't think Matthew was. I think it was.
If you
Luke
look
was a
at
historian.
Luke is the most chronological of the Gospels. So if you're looking for chronology, what did Jesus do first? What did he do second? What did he do third? What did he do fourth? The best place to look for that is Luke. What is so Luke's structure is basically chronological. What was part of his early ministry, his mid-ministry, his late ministry, his ultimate final days of ministry. And he goes through and separates those out. But what is the structure that Matthew gives to his gospel? Babel should know that. We've gone over that.
I have no idea what you're looking for. I'm sorry.
Matthew's gospel is constructed around memorization. Matthew's gospel, because how did most people receive God's word up until literally the Reformation and the Renaissance?
Word of mouth.
By hearing it read. In the first year after the invention of the printing press, in the first year of the printing press being in existence, it is estimated that they published more total volumes of books than in all of human history up to that year.
In the first year.
First year. And that wasn't with,
And is that just one printing press? Like, I mean.
no, that was, but again, those printing presses were manually run. They weren't, like where they spit out the New York Times years ago.
Machine.
They weren't powered by electrical machines where they threw out 1 million copies in an hour. But even with that, they published more books in the first year than in all of human history up to that year. Because before that day, how was every single book published?
Handwritten.
It was handwritten. So the total number of books in the world were very negligible. So most people simply heard the word. It was read to them in a synagogue, after the church split from the synagogues, in churches. So how did they retain the word of God? Did they have a Bible on their shelf that they could go, oh, where is that? Look it up in the Bible?
Memorization.
They had to memorize it. And so Matthew is constructed to be memorized. What specific way does he do that?
He groups like the parables together.
He
and stuff like
groups
that.
things together. So what is chapter 13 of Matthew?
Parables.
Parable. Matthew gathers all the parables together, or a large number of them, in one place, and there they are. And so it's like Jesus is Machine Gun Kelly with parables. And Jesus had a parable, and Jesus told 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 a parable. It's not that Jesus spoke that way. Matthew has gathered all those parables into one spot, so you can go down through and memorize each of those parables all together.
So it was by design and not necessarily all chronologically.
No, it's not chronological, it's by design. That method of gathering things together is not chronological, it is theological. He's gathering it to be memorized. Same thing with miracles. There are whole chapters and Jesus did a miracle and another miracle, and Jesus did a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, tenth. Bang, 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 bang. So if you want to learn about Jesus' miracles, you go to the book of Matthew, and he's going to gather a whole bunch of them together so you can go right down through them. So in this chapter 13 is about parables. Matthew talks about why it is that Jesus speaks in parables. And look at what he says starting in verse 11. Somebody want to read that?
He replied, because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them.
Keep going.
Whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them.
Now that seems cruel. But what does that mean? What they have will be taken. Those who do not have.
Well,
What they do have will be taken away.
well, I would say, I don't know if it's that part of the answer, but what you just said, it does mean that the more you know, the more you're responsible for, the more you'll pay in hell. You know what I mean? So you could be saying he's given them mercy if they're not saved, right?
What he's saying there is, there are people who appear to have truth. Who's he speaking of in those days?
Jews.
Pharisees.
The religious leaders who were opposing the truth and were operating in hypocrisy. The people in the temple that were, fleecing people by selling them these animals when their animals would have been perfectly accepted. Oh, no, you can't use your animals. You got to use our special animals because they're the only ones God will accept. And that we're manipulating all these things. And so he says, what you appear to have, it's going to be taken away from you. You appear to be preaching the truth, but everybody's gonna see that you're not. Obviously, in our day, we live in a day in which there are a lot of false teachers. That they appear to read from the Bible, but they are certainly not teaching what the Bible really says. And so he says, you've got the kingdom, and the more you have, the more you'll get. But these other people, and then he goes on, and verse 13 says what?
This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand.
And then he goes on and says, in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing, but never able to understand. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. Why? Why would they be hearing, but not understanding, seeing, but not really seeing?
Wasn't that kind of like in
He states why. Why?
because the people's hearts have been
Where people's hearts have become calloused, they hardly hear with their
Calloused.
ears. Yep.
Because the
The next
people's
15.
hearts are hard and they don't want to know the truth. They study the truth to get around the truth, not to accept the truth, because of their hardened hearts. They study the truth to twist the truth, not to genuinely accept it. And for those people, Jesus is speaking in parables. And people say, well, Jesus taught in parables to illustrate. For some people, it was an illustration, but for other people, it was the exact opposite of that. It hid the truth from them. And what's the determining factor? According to verse 15.
whether you
The heart.
understand it.
The heart.
Our heart. Turn over to Matthew chapter 11. Matthew 11:25. What does that say?
At the time Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children.
So what is he saying here?
It's hidden from certain people.
The truth is
It's hidden
being
from it.
hidden from some and revealed to others. And what is the determining factor here?
The heart.
Their heart.
Let's be a little more specific. When he talks about little children versus the wise and learned, what is he illustrating the difference between?
The
They're
wise and
open.
learned would be more proud.
They're
The
open to
proud
hearing.
versus the
Humble.
humble.
Because the humble are more open to hearing it.
Well, it's not whether they're open or not. God says that he won't allow them to learn, that he has hidden it from them.
Well, yeah, I guess you could be wise and still be open to being more wise.
Yeah. And what does the Bible say about that?
Is it in Proverbs?
Nope.
Some from the proud and some from the humble. I know it's that.
Mhm.
I can't think of where it is. Hebrews? No.
Actually, in two places.
First
He's
Corinthians.
saying he opposes the proud. That one?
Mm-hmm.
He opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Is that right?
Yep. Where's it found?
I was gonna say Proverbs, but I don't know.
No,
James,
New Testament.
James 4:6.
Bobby wrote that in my Bible years ago. That's why I know it's James.
Who did?
Bobby,
You said it's in two places, Pastor?
Um,
Yeah, he's quoting from
isn't the
Proverbs.
other Proverbs 3:34? Isn't that
I
the
thought
other
it was
place?
Proverbs, yeah. 334?
Yeah, that's what my Schofield note says.
so this idea of God resists the proud. How does he do that? He hides his truth from them. And that's why Jesus said you have to come as a
Baby.
little child.
It also says in 1 Corinthians 27, 127, but God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise.
Yep.
You know, if you look at pride was the first sin, and even as young children, what happens when you're a little kid and there's another little kid, he knows how to tie his shoe and you don't? What happens? I can tie my shoe and you can't. Pride.
Yeah.
So it just starts right then and there. I mean, it's
Hey,
just,
Mike,
it's so
I thought
natural.
you said you weren't gonna make fun of me anymore.
Ah,
You're no fun anymore.
look at John 7. Verse 17. What's John 7:17 say?
Anyone who chooses to do the will of God will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own.
So what is another determining factor as to whether God allows you to see the truth or not?
Whether you're obedient to
What-
God.
Your heart's open.
Doesn't say anything about heart here. What's it
Choose to
say?
do the
Desire
will
to know.
of God.
Whether the teaching comes from.
It's a
God.
desire to know,
It's not a
Choose to do
desire
the-
to know.
God's will to be
to
obedient.
do God's will then.
It is the desire to do God's will. There are a lot of people that have the attitude of, well, God, speak to me. And what do they mean by speak to me? Tell me what you
Tell me what to
want,
do.
and then what will be the result of you telling me what you want, God?
Whether I'm gonna do it or
Whether I'm going to listen.
Yeah, technically it doesn't say desires to do, it says chooses to do.
Yeah.
Which is a real action, not just a
Other
want.
translations say desire to do. A lot of people are, oh God, tell me your will. And then if I agree with it,
do it.
I'll do it. And if not, I'll figure out what I can do of it that I agree with, and the rest of it I'll just throw aside.
Yeah, it worked out well for Joe.
Well, keep looking.
So Jesus is saying, if you come with this attitude, God, I want you to show me what's right, and then I'll decide how much of it I want to put into practice. And I've had people say things like, well, I may read the Bible, but I'm not going to fill in the blank. I'm not going to be somebody who fill in the blank. And as soon as we say that, what are we doing?
Pride,
We're saying,
my way.
I'm not but choosing to do his will. I want to know his will as a point of interest, and if I can agree with it, I'll put it into practice, but ultimately, I'll decide what's right and wrong.
My way's the right one.
And if we have that attitude and come to God, God says, why should I tell you what you think I'm going to be under your supervision? You think I'm going to submit myself to you? I'm in a class right now because the teacher's in trouble at school. And because the students know the teacher's in trouble, they are just abusing him right and left. And I don't know what he did or didn't do before I got to the room, but I see how he's behaving now. And literally, he will be giving them the notes of what's on the test. Like today, he's trying to tell them what's going to be on the test. And he turned to me and said, Mr. Jenkins, when I say you need to look at this very seriously, what do I mean by it? I said, Mister, if I were listening to that as a student, I'd say this is probably going to be on the test. And he says, by probably, what percentage would you assign to it being on the test? I said, somewhere between 100 and 100%. He literally has kids in the room that are, the entire time he's going down through the lesson,
They don't have any cell phone policy.
they know he's in trouble. So one of the things I'm doing in there is I've gone to administration and I said, next time I see a kid with their cell phone out while he's talking, I'm sending them to you. You better do something about it. I'm doing it, not him. They said, well, he should write him up. And I said, he can't. And you need to understand why. He has been put in a position where he can't enforce anything because of these specters over him. So I'm doing that because I can't stand it. And then they fail the test. These tests are so simple and they're getting 30% on them.
Mhm.
And the parents are calling up and saying, you're a lousy teacher. Why is my kid failing? When he literally gave them every answer on the test the day before. Here it is, study it. And they won't do that because I never saw that was on the test.
I always thought you got a better type kid over at that school.
Well, I don't care what.
Yeah,
Well, that's why New Jersey passed the law. That's not a school policy. That is a law now that students cannot have a cell phone in school starting in September.
We're doing it this school year.
Yeah, some of our classes are as well, but and any school who does not deny students the use of their cell phones starting in September will lose state funding, period. Wow.
don't they try to say, well, it has a calculator on it, I need it.
We have calculators.
We have calculators right on the desk, right there. Put it down. Has anybody ever heard this saying? People will only do what you inspect, not what you expect.
So inspect what you expect.
Yeah. So the fact that they have not been inspecting them about stupid things like that means they won't do it. Now, if they start inspecting it, it will happen. But without it, nope. So here's the thing. He gives out all that information and they just ignore him. He literally goes down through everything they have to learn and they ignore him. God will not tolerate that. And just being in that room gets me so angry that I know what would have happened when I was a kid. And literally a student who did half of what I've seen in that class, they would have been hauled up in front of the class by the nape of their neck. And the teacher would have gotten out a paddle this long with air holes drilled down the middle and would have bent them over and pounded on them till they couldn't sit down.
Probably would have been the best thing for the kid.
And that was in the public school system. And the one who was the best at that was a man named Mr. Henninger, science teacher, 7th grade. Do you know how many people disrespected him in his class?
0%.
0. 1 student
The initial
in
one.
2 years.
One.
Yeah, 1, you're right, Paul. 1 student in 2 years, because 7th and 8th grade were together. And when he did that to a 7th grader, when they became 8th graders, they told the 7th graders all about it.
This guy's nuts.
Yeah. Don't mouth off to him. One of my good friends was the mouth offer. Anybody guess who my friend was that mouthed off to him? You know his name.
Bobby Seeley.
Bobby Seeley. And he hauled Bobby Seeley up in front of the class and he two-handed him. What? And Bobby was stupid enough to say, "Is that all the harder you can hit it?" Oh.
My mom hits harder than that.
And he hit him so hard, they heard it in Cleveland.
Wow.
Bobby limped for a week.
Were you there to witness it?
Oh, I was. And guess what?
Kept everybody
Never
quiet, didn't it?
linked up again.
You never had to worry about a kid. You never had to worry about a bully around Mr. Henninger. No kid ever got bullied in his class. No kid ever got ridiculed in his class. Kids just paid attention. They were not cruel to each other because they knew who was in charge. God isn't going to play games with people. If you don't want to know the truth, God will let you go. Fine. Do your thing. Ultimately, the day will come when you'll pay for it. But I'm not going to stop you. And so he says, if you choose to do his will, if you desire to do his will, if you're willing to do his will, another translation says, then you'll know the truth.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Is the desire to do his will from you or from him pulling you toward him?
We can get into a whole bunch of that. And ultimately, have you ever heard the thing about the gate of heaven?
No.
What is it, Mabel?
The one side says,
On the
Oh,
outside
yeah,
says,
yeah, whoever will,
whosoever will may come.
yeah, and then on the other side, it's,
On the inside, it says,
yeah,
chosen in him from the foundation of the world.
yeah.
We have to ask the question. Yes, it is. What's the verse that all of that is laid on? About this thing of, do you come to God without?
Wasn't the word of God?
No,
predestined from the foundation of the world.
no.
No one
Although
comes to the
those-
Father unless he draws them.
What's it? What is it?
No one comes to the Father unless he draws
No,
them.
it's not. No one comes to the Father.
I don't.
Jesus said, no one goes to the Father except through me, but there's another
The
thing.
Father who gives them to me?
Nobody comes to me
Unless
Unless
the
the
Father.
unless the Father draws them.
Oh, you were so close, Joy.
I tried. I get half credit.
Yeah. So Jesus
This
said,
ain't
no one
horseshoes.
can come, but look at John 3:18. And sometimes we kind of over mystify this. Well, God just didn't draw them.
John 3:18.
Yes. No, it's not John 3:18. I'm sorry. Um. Okay,
It's in John, no?
it's John 3. That's cheap.
I don't think it's,
I'm sorry. No, John 12:32. John 12:32.
oh, yeah.
Kind of confused with the one with John 3:14 about Moses being lifting up the serpent. So the Son of Man will be lifted up. What does he say in 12:32?
And I, if I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all peoples to myself.
So how many people is God drawing?
All of them.
Everyone. So this idea that God's up there going, you wanted to come, but you can't because I'm not drawing you. That's the implication that's sometimes given with that. Oh, God isn't drawing you, ha ha ha. Jesus says, if I'm lifted up, I'll draw everybody to me. So de facto, God has already reached out to draw all people. People who've never been exposed to the truth of the gospel.
It's all a matter of will from that free will
He
from that
has
point, right?
still been drawing them. That's what Romans 1 is all about. The heavens themselves declare God's glory, so that they are
Without excuse.
without excuse. I will be very surprised if Socrates is not in heaven. Socrates lived before Christ.
Didn't they kill him for,
Why was Socrates killed? He was killed the same way that General Rommel, Field Marshal Rommel was killed. How was Rommel killed?
went against Hitler?
Drink poison or we'll kill you and your family. Socrates was told, drink poison or we'll kill you and your family.
So either way, he'll die, but this way, his family.
This way you die with honor and we give you a state funeral and everybody thinks you're a wonderful guy. Otherwise, you'll die condemned and your friends and family will pay the price for associating with you. Make our life easy and we'll let you go with a big send off. But you're dead either way. And Socrates was killed. What was the charge that Socrates was charged with? Anybody know?
One God?
Greek gods.
Yeah, he
One
would
God.
bow to the Greek gods.
He was condemned for atheism.
Because he believed in one God.
The charge against him was atheism because he did not believe in the visible Greek gods, Zeus, Apollo, Aphrodite, all those Hera, all those Greek people
The
given
pantheon.
godlike. Instead, what did Socrates teach? That there is one invisible God who isn't like human beings at all, but is so far above us that we can't understand him.
Hmm.
And that one God made it all. That sounds pretty biblical faith to me.
Well, you know what? Apparently at some point they changed their mind because on Mars Hill, they had the altar to the unknown
Well,
God.
Well, that was just, we've left a few out, but that doesn't
Covering
mean
themselves, yeah.
Yeah.
Just
he was the singular God. He's just one more. Oops, we forgot one.
Just want to cover all our.
There's
Yeah,
837. We think there might be 838. So the bottom line is Socrates had never been exposed to Jesus. But I believe that someone like a Socrates was honestly seeking, because God's drawing everyone. And he was willing, and so what? God somehow revealed that to him. How? I don't know. But do you believe that he got that on his own without inspiration from the Holy Spirit?
No.
No,
Nope. Some of you who've seen the video Transformations. Who here has not seen Transformations?
Not seen? I haven't. I don't even know what you're talking about.
We should
haven't.
really show those again. Transformations 1 and 2. Transformations talks about the Inuit people up in Alaska, up in eastern Canada. And during World War II, a missionary came over from England to go up into Canada and preach the gospel to the Inuit people, who we call the Eskimos. When he went up there, he found that they had years before a Nanook. You ever heard the Nanook of the North? You know what a Nanook is?
A
I
bear.
didn't either.
White person?
A Nanook is an Inuit person who has been absorbed into white culture and then gone back to his own people. They called them Nanooks. They spoke English or French. They knew Western European culture. They were called the Nooks. And the Nook had gone up there and he said, there's a new God that you guys need to know about named Yeshua. Yeshua.
Joshua.
Yeah, Yeshua, Messiah. Jesus. I's became J's. Jesus' name was not Jesus, it was Yeshua. Because I's became J's in the Middle Ages. Just like,
YESHUA
yeah,
or something like that.
that's why, like Jehovah, I grew up on Jehovah. Jehovah was not at all the pronunciation.
Yahweh or
It would have been Yahweh or something like that.
the Jewish people say Yuhe. That's how they.
Okay. And the thing is, since Hebrew was a dead language for so many
I
years,
don't know.
and it doesn't have vowels, we don't know exactly how they said it 3,000 years ago. Nobody does. Anybody that tries to tell you differently just isn't being honest.
Oh, so it may not be Jesus' name.
We know it's not that because the Y or I sound or E sound was changed, the I sound, or EI sound was changed to J during the Middle Ages because of a shift in letters in the English language. It's a very complicated thing, but the bottom line is words that used to start with I now started with J. And it's a totally different sound in the English language. And so Yahweh, that Y-ish I sound became a J.
Yeah.
Jehovah.
Yeah. And Paul, that's not Jesus. That's
And
God's
same with-
name, proper name is Yahweh or
The same
Jehovah.
principle.
Right.
I's
So,
became
yeah.
J's. So Jesus came from Yeshua.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
Yeshua.
Joshua. Yeah.
yeah. And Joshua came from Yeshua.
Yeah. Which is,
Became Joshua.
and it's a common name.
Yes.
Mhm.
So anyway, one of their shamans was so convicted about this new god Yeshua that he decided to go on a sacred hunt. When they wanted to have a spiritual revelation in that tribe, they would go out and do a seal hunt. And if they got a seal, they'd ask God a question and they go out on a seal hunt. And if they got a seal, they'd say the answer was yes. If they didn't get a seal, they'd say, nope, the answer is no. So he said, is this new God Yeshua the real God? And he deliberately went out on a seal hunt on a night when they never hunt seals because seals are never caught on a night like that. Because he said, if there is this God who wants me to know, he'll give me a seal, not just as a normal thing, but as a miracle. And lo and behold, he gets a seal. And he comes back to the village, has no Bible, nothing of that, and says, from now on, we're going to talk about Yeshua. We're all going to come to believe in Yeshua. He's the only God, none of these animals, nothing like this. Yeshua is the great God of heaven. The missionary shows up during World War II, preaches the gospel within weeks, 99% of the tribe converts to Christianity. So again, God was drawing people where there was no Bible, there was no preaching, there was no. And I believe that you would find that in many places around the world. And I've talked to missionaries that have had similar things. I've also talked to missionaries who've gone into places and that nothing but hard hearts for years. And no one ever get converted. So again, it comes back to our desire. What do we want? Do we want to be honest with God, or are we trying to gain him? And that's what this whole thing is about, that God doesn't allow us to gain him. If we want to come to the Bible and study it as something that we're going to pass judgment on, and we're going to assume that we get the final say, what's God going to do?
He won't reveal things to us.
Study all you want, you'll never understand it.
This is being recorded, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a good
But if
start.
we come with a willing heart saying, if you show me what's true, I'll do it. And that's why people have prayed prayers. People talk about, the prayer of faith. How many people have prayed the prayer, God, if there even is such a thing as a God, if you reveal yourself to me, I'll do whatever you tell me to do.
How many people? A lot of people,
Apparently
probably.
a lot, yeah.
And what is the result if you do that honestly?
He
God
reveals
reveals
himself.
Yeah, God reveals himself. So again, it comes down to, we need to understand that God won't be strung along. He is not going to be placed in a situation where we get to pass judgment on him. That's just not the relationship that we're going to have with him. Does that make sense? And
Yeah, it's not the clear, I mean, it's as clear as it possibly can be. But there's always like a little thing but I get what you're saying, and it makes more sense than anything else.
yeah,
So,
and the bottom line is, God is in the process of drawing everyone. But he won't be
Toyed with.
toyed with.
Yeah.
He is not going to be the girl at the dance that everybody snickers about her sitting over there and ha ha ha, and then plot about nobody asked her to dance because, we'll show her. God won't be that person.
but it seems like some people have come kicking and screaming, and maybe just like if you look at who's the guy who wrote the song Amazing Grace? he kind of, he was just a bad apple. And his mother prayed for him and he was just bad. And then he was on that ship and he almost died and he got scared,
Yep.
So it was the fear of God that brought him. So I guess God does that, he can't put fear in us.
Yeah, and again, it comes down, there's a difference between an honest rejection and an attempt to manipulate.
That's it. That's kind of the splitting hairs of the whole
Yeah,
thing. That's
it
the
is.
crux of it. Yeah. And just like you said, because my father did the same to me. Remember you said you were trying to explain people about God and how he is good, but he has a side to him, like he has his wrath. And I think you did it to some kids or something like that.
Yeah.
My dad did it to me one day. He said, I was a little kid and he says, I said, I remember I've said, I was, something happened. I said, well, I don't love you or something like that. He says, I don't care if you don't love me. He says, but you better fear me. And I knew he meant it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was that was love that did that. That's what his love.
Yep.
That did that.
So we need to understand, and as we talk to other people about Christ, that there is this edge to this. It's not that you get to play games with it and then do whatever you want with it. God will be absolutely fair to you when you deal with him fairly. We know Joshua chapter 1. What does God say to Joshua?
In Joshua 1.
Yeah. Verse 5. And as quoted in Hebrews. It's also in Joshua 7.
I will never leave you nor forsake you. Is that-
I will never leave you nor forsake you. But that is not what God said to other people.
Continue in my word.
Look at what he says to King Asa.
Where's that at?
Second Chronicles 15, 15:2. Second Chronicles 15:2.
And he went out to meet Asa and said to him, Hear me, Asa, and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you while you are with him.
Whoa,
If you seek-
wait a minute. Does he say to them, I will never leave you nor forsake you? Does he say to Asa, I'll never leave
No.
you nor forsake you? What does he say?
The Lord is with you while you are with him.
If you're with me, what?
He's
I'll
with
be
you.
I'm with you.
What's the same thing in that verse? It says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. It doesn't say you will never leave me.
But see, God knew Joshua's heart. What was Joshua going to be like?
Like Moses?
He was never going to leave God. So does he have to make it an unconditional conditional promise to Joshua?
No,
Why?
because he knew his heart.
Because he knew Joshua was going to remain faithful. But what is he saying to Asa?
As long as you're with me, I'm with you.
Asa's heart, where's Asa's heart? Well, maybe
On the
yes,
fence.
maybe no. And so when he comes to Asa, he doesn't say like he does, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. He says, as long as you're with me, I'll be with you. And then he goes on and says, what? What's the next part of the verse? If you seek him, what will happen?
He will be found by you.
You'll find him. He'll be found by you. But if you forsake him,
He will forsake you.
oh. So we need to understand, again, it's this same principle. If we're playing straight with God, God will play straight with us. But if we think that we can manipulate God or use God or twist God or judge God or put up our own rules for God, what's God say? No.
Adios.
Who do you think you are? And I think if you look at things reasonably, that is not an unreasonable standard for God to take, is it? Is that in any way unfair to anyone?
Oh.
And it's not like God play favorites. Oh, I'm gonna. As long as you play straight with me, I'll be totally straight with you. You want to play around with me? What is it? Play with the bulls and get
Get
the
the horns.
get the horns. And I think that we need to understand that because that is not taught in the church today. And I think that's why you've got a lot of people who feel that they're entitled to play games with God and God's still got to play straight with them. And they'll take out of context a Joshua 1:5 or
Hebrews 13:5.
Hebrews 13:5 where it's quoted. And say, well, see, God's forced himself into the box. I get to play games with God, and he's got to
13:5.
play. He's got to play straight with me. And God says, no, no. I'm not that stupid. Does this all make
A
sense?
ton of sense.
So, guys, have a great week. Hope to see everybody Thursday. We'll have communion.
Communion is done.
Paul.
Perfect.